In this video, we'll go through 5 common conditions that you'll be writing into the agreement of purchase and sale for your clients. I'll simplify them so you can understand them and explain them. Some are conditions that you may be adding to every agreement of purchase and sale, and others will be situational dependent. All great stuff to know for once licensed, and even some of this stuff can help you if you are still in the Humber College Real Estate program. As usual, if you are looking to have it all today, look to my buyer and seller logistics and actions course in the description below. How to work with buyers, how to work with sellers from A to Z, specifically here in Ontario. More on that later in the video, but let's just dive right into it. Okay, so again, these are common conditions. Of course, there's hundreds of different types of conditions you will use or may use, but what I like to teach is what you're going to see 95 to 99% of the time. The first 3 we do are ones that you might even include in every single agreement of purchase and sale for your clients. First, access to property. There are 2 here for access to property, a very simple one and a longer one. Essentially, with access to property clauses, you are writing in a condition that makes sure the seller agrees that the buyer has the right to view the property X amount of times, usually it is about 2 to 3 times, before closing date on agreed time with enough notice, usually about 24 hours. This is so your clients can, after the offer is accepted, go visit the property, say if they need to do some measurements, or even if they plan on bringing a contractor, if they plan on doing any renovations, stuff like that. Usually 1 to 2 times, maybe 3 times this will occur. I have worked with clients that want to see the property 4+ times, then it gets a little into a scenario where you're intruding a little too much, but usually 1 to 2 times is more than enough. Again, you can write this condition as a longer one or a shorter one, to each their own. This one you can probably keep very simple. Second on the list, chattels and fixtures in good working order. Simple again, but the tricky wording can confuse some people, so let's break it down. The seller represents and warrants that the chattels and fixtures as included in this agreement of purchase and sale will be in good working order and free from all liens and encumbrances on completion. So this first part, chattels are of course movable objects like furniture, and fixtures are attached to the property like a light fixture. The seller is also promising that on these items that there is no debts or legal claims or anything like that. In other words, they are fully owned by the sellers and there's no financial obligation to anyone else, and they are now passing them along. Second half of this condition, and I don't really love how these conditions are written personally, but you do see them all the time, so you have to understand them, not just for once you're licensed, but you'll even get this terminology used in the Humber College material. The parties agree that this representation and warranty shall survive and not merge on completion of this transaction, but apply only to the state of the property at completion of this transaction. First part of that, survival and representation of warranty, right? I'm gonna pop up a little graphic on the screen here. This is a promise by the seller that doesn't just apply during the sale process, but even after the sale is completed. So if there's an issue later on, the buyer can still hold the seller accountable for any problems that were there at the time of the sale. However, it applies to the state at completion. This promise only covers the condition of the item at the time the sale is finalized. If any issues arise after that, the seller isn't responsible unless those issues were already there when the sale was completed. Usually everything is in good working order, but let's say there's something like a bar fridge or something like that in the garage, and the new buyers didn't get a chance to go check it until a couple days, and they found out it actually wasn't working. They can then kind of look to the sellers. The earlier the better, so best practices is have your buyers go through the entire house, turn everything on, check this, check that. You can even go through with them and do this. If everything was working well the day the buyers bought it, of course, if something happens to these items, let's say a fridge, in the next year, the sellers are not responsible. Certain specific conditions as such can be written, and for a bit longer actually. Let's say for instance the buyers are buying a house in the winter time, let's say December, and it has a pool. You can write similar conditions as such to make sure the condition applies much further past closing, let's say until July or something like that if it was a pool, to make sure all of the equipment and the pool is in good working order. It would also survive and not merge at completion. However, you would for sure include include a provision date, right? So it'd only go until the end of June, let's say. Okay, so longer one there, but that survive and not merge does confuse a lot of people. On to third on the list, standard condition you would include for your buyers would be balance of purchase price. The buyer agrees to pay the balance of the purchase price subject to adjustments. Adjustments are actually done by the lawyers. They could be, for instance, if the sellers have paid a year's worth of property tax, the buyers might have to pay that and the sellers will be getting some adjustments back. That's one example. Keep going to the sellers on completion of this transaction with funds drawn from a lawyer's trust account in the form of a bank draft, certified check, or wire transfer. So 3 good conditions there that you may include for every single offer for your buyers. Let's move on to 2 common conditions as well. Again, 95 to 99% of the time that you might include, but it will be more house specific. First, inspection of property by a home inspector. This offer is conditional upon the inspection of the subject property by a home inspector at the buyer's own expense and the obtaining of a report satisfactory to the buyer in the buyer's sole and absolute discretion. Unless the buyer gives notice in writing delivered to the seller personally or in accordance with any other provision for the delivery of notice in this agreement of purchase and sale or any schedule thereto not later than, here you would put a date. A very common date and time frame that we use in the industry is about 5 days. Thereto not later than the date that this condition is fulfilled, this offer shall be null and void and the deposit shall be returned to the buyer in full without deduction. If the home inspector were to find something that was completely dissatisfactory to the buyer, they can walk away without having any deduction to their deposit. However, in the real world, if they find something, there are many things that can happen. The sellers can pay for it. It can be an adjustment made on the offer price. The deal is not dead for sure if the home inspector were to find something. The seller agrees to cooperate in providing access to the property for the purpose of this inspection. This condition is included for the benefit of the buyer and may be waived at the buyer's sole option by notice in writing to the seller as foresaid within the time period stated herein. For those still in the Humber College Real Estate Program, this is a condition precedent and can be waived by the buyer. That's inspection, and another high percentage one would be arranging a new mortgage. This offer is conditional upon the buyer arranging at the buyer's expense a new charge/mortgage. The industry still uses charge/mortgage. You've probably seen charge. No one uses that in the real world, of course, but you'll still see it out there. You've probably seen it in the Humber material. Continue unless the buyer gives notice in writing delivered to the seller personally or in accordance with any other provisions for the delivery of notice in this agreement of purchase and sale or any schedule thereto not later than date. And again, 5 days would be the industry standard again for this one. That this condition is fulfilled, this offer shall be null and void and the deposit shall be returned to the buyer in full without deduction. It continues down there. This is the benefit of the buyer, and the seller must allow access to the property to fulfill the purpose of this condition. Generally, you won't need access to the property. The bank might sometimes need a full appraisal done, but even then they don't enter the property. That would be very rare circumstance there. Also, you might find that this condition can be a longer condition as well, as some sellers will want specifics, as in how much they need, the mortgage rate, everything like that, to make sure they're doing their best. Again, all of these conditions, right? The entire agreement of purchase and sale is written in good faith. You must make real efforts to complete these conditions. 5 really good conditions there, and I'm going to do some separate videos on a condition of sale of the buyer's property, right? And that's a longer video and a very in-depth one, so look for that coming soon. But as mentioned, if you are looking to have it all, how to work with buyers and sellers, how to write these forms, add these conditions, everything from A to Z, buy, sell side, specifically here in Ontario, look to that buyer and seller logistics and actions course in the description below. It is everything I wish I had when I was starting. I go through the entire transaction, sharing my screen from top to bottom in detail. It will save you hundreds of hours and so much stress. I am always updating it, and it's lifetime access, meaning you can refer back to it when needed. That is a huge part because sometimes it's impossible to memorize all of these details in one go. If someone was to teach you this in one go, hover over your shoulder and try to teach you it, it's very hard to memorize. That link in the description below is also a value link for the YouTube family for the time being. I'll put that same link right here if needed. If you have any questions at all, you can DM, email, comment on this video. I get back to everyone. I'm Callum Moore, eXp Realty Real Estate Broker here in Ontario. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.